All right, hello third graders. We have been going over our sensory details for the past few days, so we're going to keep learning about them. Remember, why do we want sensory details in our writing? We want it so when someone's reading what we're writing, or when we read something, we can imagine it in our head. So it's like painting a picture with words, which is pretty great, right? So we can imagine it just by how the writer is writing his words. We can imagine it in our minds. So it makes the stories come to life. So remember, these engage our five senses, which is sound, which is something we can hear with our ears, sight, something we can see with our eyes, touch, something we can feel with our hands, and then smell, which is something we smell with our nose, and taste, something that we can taste with our mouth. So I know for sight and smell, breaking and aparting which one is sight and which one is, not sight and smell, sight and touch. So remember, touch is something where I can hold it in my hand. So I could say the scratchy grass or the soft blanket. But sight is going to be something that I see, not necessarily that I feel in my hand. So I can see scratchy grass, but I look at the adjective. Scratchy is something that it's going to feel. I can touch it, but I can't see scratchy. So as we go through our sensory details, pay attention to the adjectives as well. So for sight, I could say the bright candle. Now I could touch a candle, but it's talking about bright, how it looks. So we have to make sure we pay attention to the adjectives in front of it just to help. So that was just a little bit of a review. So we can use these details in our writing, and we will get your story to surround the reader and help them feel like they are there with your characters. All right, so we're gonna practice writing and describing things using our sensory details today. So let's just go over some words that are going to fall under each category. So words that we can use to describe smell. We could say foul smelling, fragrant, moldy. We could say it smells like flowery. We could say the kitchen smells like cinnamon when my grandma was baking cinnamon rolls. So it's something that we can do with our nose. All right, so then if we do taste, when we use the word taste, we can say bitter. It wasn't very sweet. We could say sour. We could say chocolatey or creamy. That's kind of describing how something might taste. For touch and feel, we could say cold. We could say warm. We could say bumpy. We could say sandy, like rough. Or we could say it felt hard. So we could say all those things about what we feel with our hands. We could say scratchy. I could feel my hair and say, oh, my hair feels soft. Maybe, yeah. And then sound. So words to describe that would be like a buzz, like maybe you hear a bumblebee buzzing like buzz, buzz. You could say cheer. You could hear a crowd cheering. They could be cheering loudly. You could say whisper. You could say that sounds like someone's whispering. And now when we're using words that go with how something looks, we could say our sight with our eyes. We could say blurred. We could say bright. We could say colorless, there's no color. Or we could say colors like blue or yellow. Colors are how something looks. And remember, when we're using our sensory details, they can be used as adjectives. We are describing something. And adjectives always describe a noun. That was a little bit of a review. So now we're going to see pictures on, and what we're going to do is talk about what it looks at first. So I could say the surfer saw the shadow of a huge shark in the next wave. So here's the surfer, here's the shark. But if we want to add more details to it and really show how the characters feel, we could say every muscle froze. Like as soon as you see the shark, how are you feeling? Your muscles freeze, and his breath felt as if it was yanked out of his lungs as he watched the cold, silent terror swim in front of him. So that's just describing, it's adding a little more detail, exactly how the surfer feels. So you could say the surfer saw the shadow of a huge shark in the next wave, but that can be a little boring as well. We're going to try to add more details today in our writing. And don't worry, we're going to keep practicing our writing. This is just going to be a little exercise today. And remember, with these pictures, we're not going to create a story. We're just going to give a sentence describing and adding a description with our sensory details. So we already have the picture of what's happening. Now we're going to describe it with sensory details. We're going to go over 2 to 3 examples. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is look at this picture. We see people, we see they're in a raft, we see they're in a river, they are white water rafting. But now we want to make this into a sentence, adding detail and making sure the reader can imagine what they're doing without looking at the picture. So we want to describe to someone what's going on in this picture without showing them this picture, if that makes sense. So we're painting this picture in their head with our words. So without someone looking at this, we could say the group of people were holding their breath from fear as they float down the freezing river holding their yellow paddles. So the yellow paddles would be a sight, that's something you can see, and then the freezing river is how it felt. And then showing that they're holding their breath because it looks like they're going down a little hill. So then it should add a picture in their head, in the reader's head. All right, so when we see this picture, we see a tiger and we see a man, and we see where they're standing. So to describe what's going on, if someone couldn't look at the picture and we had to describe the picture to them, we could say the gigantic tiger, so that's how the tiger looks. It's taller than the man, hugs the man in the warm green plains because the sun is shining, so it's warm outside. And if we look, they're in green plains, which is the area. So we want to be able to share the picture, say the picture in words to someone who can't see it. So let's go over examples of our sensory details. All right, so now we're going to go through some examples that will help our reading, or when we write, help our writing come alive. So for sight, some example words could be glossy, that could describe how something looks, glowing, green, huge, large, lavender, so colors, little, long, low, motionless, it's not moving, or muddy, so those are what something could look like. And then if we want to know what something sounds like, we could describe it as barking, buzz, chattering, cheer, chuckle, clapping, coughing, purring. So those are all sounds that we can hear, that if we put them in our writing, it'll help our writing come to life. For taste, we could say something tasted peppery, pickled, raw, like raw fish maybe, refreshing, it tasted good, rich, sometimes they say chocolate can taste rich, and salted, like they put too much salt on it. And so those are all things that we can taste. And then smell, we could say something smells sweaty or stinky. We could say something smells old. We could say something smells flowery or citrusy, so it smells like fruits if we say citrusy, like lemons or limes, those fruits. We could say something smells doggy or like a wet dog, that sometimes has a smell. And then if we want to talk about how something touches or how something feels that we can feel with our hands, we could say something feels smooth, something feels like sticky, like if you got chewed gum in your hand. Or we could say something feels warm. We could say like if you just warmed up a cookie in the microwave and it feels warm on your hand. We could say something feels fluffy like a pillow, or dry or cold. So these are all words that we can use to make our writing come alive. So for our homework today, what we're going to be doing is on Edmodo, there's going to be a quiz, and it's going to have a boring sentence. Like it's just going to say, I'll give you an example. For number 1, it's going to say English class is fun. But I want you to add some details into class. So why is it fun? Like, do you hear things or see things in the class that make it fun? And you can just make it up whatever you want, and you can use these words. Are there sounds in the class that make it fun? Are there smells in the class? You could talk about something smells good, or maybe English is fun because your chair is really fluffy and you get to sit on it with your feet up. So I want you just to describe the sentence in another word, in words, in adjectives, so that you can paint a picture in someone's head. So for homework, you're going to have a boring sentence, and then you are going to add sensory details, which here are some examples, to make it interesting. After you finish, I want you to read the sentence or have someone read the sentence with their eyes closed. Sorry. I want you to have someone in your house close their eyes. I want you to read them the sentence you wrote and see if they can paint that picture in their head. All right, and have a lot of fun with your sensory details. Thank you. Bye.